Lena was never one to back down from a challenge, but right now, standing in front of her father, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her dad, Colonel Darnell Carter, was a man of honor, discipline, and military precision. His house, his rules. When he looked at her with those sharp, almost piercing eyes, Lena knew there was no room for lies. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. She had to tell him the truth, no matter how much it tore her up inside. "Dad, we need to talk," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her heart was racing like a drumbeat in her chest, but she stood firm. This wasn't just any conversation. This was the conversation that would change everything. Colonel Carter, with his broad shoulders and stern expression, didn't look up from the paperwork he was scanning. He simply grunted, signaling her to continue. The man had seen combat, dealt with life-and-death situations, and handled troops under his command. But Lena was his daughter, his only flesh and blood, and he had no idea what she was about to unload on him. "Dad, you need to know something about Sharon," Lena began, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "She's not who you think she is. She's been hiding stuff from you, and it's all been eating me up inside." The colonel looked up now, his face scrunching in confusion. Sharon was his second wife, a woman he met after Lena's mother passed away. Lena hated the way Sharon always acted like she could replace her mom. Sharon had that perfect, picture-perfect persona that fooled everyone except Lena. "Sharon's been acting weird, Dad, like really weird. She's been playing games, manipulating things behind your back, and I can't keep quiet about it anymore." Lena was talking fast now, words tumbling out in a flood. "I've seen the way she talks to people, the way she manipulates you when I'm not around. She's got her own agenda, and it ain't for the family." Colonel Carter's jaw tightened, his face going hard like stone. Lena could tell she was starting to rattle him, but it wasn't enough yet. She needed him to hear her. This was about more than just a tense stepmother-daughter relationship. It was about something darker, something much worse. "You're not making any sense, Lena," he said, his voice low and firm, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "What exactly are you saying about Sharon?" Lena's throat was dry, but she kept going. "Dad, she's been stealing from you. I've seen her taking money from your wallet when you're asleep, and don't even get me started on the way she's been running around with her friends. You trust her, and I get it, but she's using you, she's using us." The colonel stood up slowly, pushing his chair back with a screech that echoed through the room. "Are you telling me my wife is a thief?" Lena's stomach twisted. "I don't know if she's a thief, but something's off, Dad. You need to open your eyes." He didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared at her. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, Colonel Carter spoke, his voice colder than Lena had ever heard it before. "You better be sure about what you're saying, Lena, because if you're wrong, there will be consequences." Lena didn't back down. "I'm sure, Dad, I'm sure." The colonel took a deep breath, as if processing what she'd just laid on him. The air was still thick with tension, but Lena could see the wheels turning in his head. She knew that look. He wasn't the type to take things lightly. And right then, Lena realized her world was about to turn upside down. The next day, Lena could barely hold it together. Her mind was racing with thoughts of what she'd said to her dad the night before. She couldn't shake the look on his face when he stood up and left the room. He was angry, confused, and for the first time it seemed like he didn't know what to believe. Lena sat at the kitchen table, tapping her fingers nervously on the surface. She was waiting for her dad to do something about what she had told him, but deep down she wasn't sure if he would. After all, Sharon was his second wife. He loved her, and love had a funny way of blinding people to the truth. The colonel wasn't like that, though. He had trained his whole life to see things others missed, but Lena couldn't help but wonder, had he missed something in his own home? "Hey, Lena," a voice called from the doorway. It was her older brother, Malik. He leaned against the frame with his arms crossed, looking at her with a raised eyebrow. "You good?" Lena nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just thinking." Malik didn't buy it. "You don't look like you're just thinking. You look like you're about to jump out of your skin. What's going on?" Lena hesitated for a moment, then let out a long sigh. "I talked to Dad last night." Malik raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "About what?" Lena bit her lip. About Sharon. A long silence followed as Malik processed her words. He wasn't one to judge easily, but he knew how complicated things had gotten since their dad married Sharon. He knew how much Lena hated her and how things had only gotten worse since they moved in together. "What did you tell him?" Malik finally asked, his voice low. "I told him the truth," Lena replied, her eyes meeting his. "That Sharon's been up to no good, that she's been sneaky with money, and that she's been running around with people she shouldn't be around." Malik frowned. "And you think he's gonna believe you, after everything that's happened between you and her?" Lena paused. She hadn't thought about it that way. Of course, her dad loved Sharon. He'd never believe she could do anything bad, but that didn't change what Lena had seen. "He has to," Lena said, her voice rising. "He has to, Malik, because if he doesn't, I'm not just gonna let her keep playing us, keep playing him." Malik stared at his sister, his expression softening. He could see the pain in her eyes. She had never been one to back down from a fight, and she sure as hell wasn't about to back down from this one. "You gotta be careful, though," Malik warned. "This could blow up real bad. Sharon's got people in her corner, and your dad's not gonna wanna believe it. You don't wanna put him in a position where he's gotta choose between you and her." Lena swallowed hard. Malik was right. It was already bad enough that she'd accused Sharon of all this behind his back. But if it got out, if Sharon found out Lena was trying to expose her, it would turn the house into a battlefield. "Look, I know what I'm doing," Lena snapped, standing up and pacing the floor. "I can't just sit here and let her walk all over us. I don't care who she knows or who she's got in her corner. This is our family, and I'm not gonna let her ruin it." Malik's tone shifted. "I get it, but you gotta be smart about this, Lena. Your dad's a military man. He don't take kindly to accusations. You think he's gonna listen to you when you just drop all this on him without proof?" Lena froze. Her brother had a point. She couldn't just go in and accuse Sharon of everything without having the proof to back it up. She needed more. She needed something concrete. Her mind raced, and then it hit her. She needed to follow Sharon, watch her, get the proof she needed to show her dad what was really going on. "I gotta go," Lena said suddenly, grabbing her jacket and heading toward the door. Malik looked at her, his eyes wide. "Wait, where are you going?" "I'm going to figure this out, Malik," Lena said with determination. "I'm gonna find the proof." As Lena stepped out into the cool morning air, the weight of Lena had made up her mind. The path ahead was clear. She had to gather the evidence to prove Sharon's dirty little secrets. But as she walked through the quiet streets, her mind was already spinning. How was she supposed to catch Sharon in the act? Sharon was clever. She was always one step ahead of everyone, especially her dad. But Lena wasn't going to give up. She couldn't. Not after everything Sharon had put their family through. Her first stop, the local coffee shop. Sharon had a habit of meeting up with her friends there, people Lena didn't trust, people who made her skin crawl. Lena had seen them there before, whispering in corners, their eyes darting around like they were making shady deals. Lena didn't know who these people were, but she was about to find out. She pulled into the parking lot of the coffee shop and parked a little farther from the entrance, trying to keep a low profile. The place was busy this morning, the early rush already in full swing. Lena kept her eyes peeled as she walked inside, trying to blend in with the crowd of customers. Her heart was pounding in her chest. What if Sharon saw her? What if she figured out what Lena was up to? Lena shook off the thought and forced herself to focus. She had to stay calm. She had to do this the right way. Lena stood by the counter, pretending to check her phone, but her eyes were scanning the room. There, at a corner table, was Sharon, sitting across from a man Lena didn't recognize. The man was tall, dark-skinned, and wore a tight leather jacket that screamed trouble. He was leaning in close to Sharon, laughing at something she said. Lena felt a knot form in her stomach. This wasn't just a casual meeting. The way they were acting, the way they kept glancing around, this was something more. Lena moved closer, trying to keep her distance but still stay close enough to hear. She pretended to be reading the menu, but her ears were trained on their conversation. She caught a few words here and there, but nothing that stood out. Then, as luck would have it, Sharon dropped her voice, her words nearly drowned out by the noise of the cafe. But Lena was able to make out a few key phrases that made her freeze. Yeah, I got it. I'll make sure he doesn't find out, Sharon said, her voice low and hushed. I'm handling it, you just do your part. Lena's heart skipped a beat. What the hell was Sharon talking about? She was handling what? And why was she so worried about someone finding out? Her dad. Lena couldn't help but feel a sickening sense of dread creep up her spine. The man across from Sharon smirked. You sure you can keep him in the dark? 'Cause I don't wanna be the one to clean up a mess if you screw this up. Lena's hand clenched around the edge of the counter, her fingers going white. This was it. This was the confirmation she needed. Sharon was involved in something shady, and it had everything to do with keeping her dad in the dark. But Lena couldn't stop there. She needed more. She needed to hear the full conversation. She had to know what Sharon was really up to before she could tell her dad everything. Just as Lena started to move closer, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She jumped, startled by the sudden noise. Sharon glanced in her direction, and for a brief second their eyes met. Lena's heart raced. She quickly pulled her phone out and pretended to answer a call. Yeah, what's up? Lena said, trying to play it cool even though her voice was shaking. Sharon's gaze lingered on her for a second longer before she went back to her conversation, but Lena knew she'd been caught staring. Damn it, she needed to get out of here before Sharon got suspicious. All right, I'll be right there, Lena said, quickly walking away from the table. She didn't look back as she exited the coffee shop, but her mind was already working overtime. She'd heard enough to know that Sharon was up to something major. She was making deals, dangerous deals, and keeping her dad completely oblivious. Lena couldn't stop now, she was already too deep in it. Back in her car, Lena stared at the rearview mirror. Her reflection stared back, but it wasn't just her own face she saw anymore. It was the shadow of something much bigger, something dark and sinister. She was about to Lena couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling faster than she could control. The conversation at the coffee shop had been a wake-up call, and now she was in deep. She'd been following Sharon for a while now, trying to piece together the puzzle, but things were moving too quickly. The whole situation felt like a ticking time bomb, and Lena didn't know how much longer she could keep playing this game without getting caught. Back at home, Lena kept to herself, trying to act normal. She didn't want to give anything away to her dad, especially after that intense conversation they had the night before. He still hadn't said much, but Lena could tell he was on edge. He wasn't exactly hostile, but there was a distance between them now, a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. She spent the next few days gathering more information, following Sharon at every opportunity. It wasn't easy, especially with Sharon's ability to disappear into thin air whenever Lena thought she had her cornered. But Lena was relentless. She had to find the smoking gun, the one thing that would completely expose Sharon for who she really was. It wasn't long before Lena got her break. Sharon had been acting weirdly secretive, staying up late, whispering on the phone, and making sudden, unexplained trips. So one afternoon, Lena decided to follow her again. This time, Sharon's movements were a bit more predictable. Lena had been watching her closely, and she knew this trip would be different. Lena tailed her to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place was hidden behind a cluster of trees, the sort of spot you'd never expect to find in a neighborhood like theirs. Sharon pulled into the parking lot, getting out of her car with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed tones. Lena parked a good distance away and waited. She didn't know what Sharon was doing here, but whatever it was, it couldn't be good. Her dad wouldn't be happy if he found out she'd been involved in something like this, and Lena had no intention of letting it go unnoticed. After what seemed like hours, Sharon finally entered the warehouse, disappearing inside. Lena waited another 10 minutes, then grabbed her phone and dialed Malik. Yo, you're not gonna believe what I'm about to tell you, Lena said, trying to keep her voice calm, even though she was anything but. Malik's voice came through the phone, low and careful. What's going on? You sound like you're in deep. Lena glanced over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching her. Sharon's at some warehouse on the edge of town. I don't know what she's doing here, but it's not good. I need you to help me figure out what's going on. I can't do this alone. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then Malik spoke again, his tone more serious than ever. This sounds sketchy, Lena. You need to be careful. I'll be there in a few, but you've gotta lay low, all right? Don't do anything stupid. I won't, Lena replied, feeling a small sense of relief that Malik was going to back her up. But we can't let her get away with this. Whatever it is she's doing, I know it's tied to whatever she's been hiding from Dad, and I'm not about to let her keep playing us. The line went quiet for a second and Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what was going on inside that warehouse, but something told her it wasn't going to be pretty. The thought of her dad finding out everything would devastate him. But Lena knew one thing for sure: if she didn't stop Sharon now, things were only going to get worse. Moments later, Malik pulled up beside her car, his black truck rumbling as it stopped. Lena quickly slid into the passenger seat, glancing back at the warehouse once more. The dark, looming building felt like it was swallowing them whole. "All right, what's the plan?" Malik asked, his voice tense as he adjusted his rearview mirror. "We're going in," Lena said, her voice determined. "I'm not waiting around for Sharon to come back out. We need to see what's going on in there now." Malik shook his head, a concerned look crossing his face. "You sure about this? We don't know what we're dealing with. If she's involved in something shady, it could be dangerous." Lena met his gaze, her eyes hard with resolve. "I'm sure. I've got a feeling this is the break we've been waiting for. We've come this far, there's no turning back now." With that, Malik nodded, putting the truck in gear. They drove past the entrance, keeping their speed low, and parked a few blocks away, hidden from view. Lena's pulse was racing as they approached the warehouse on foot, her body tense with every step. "Stay close," Malik whispered, his voice barely audible. "And if anything goes down, we bail." "Got it?" Lena nodded, her eyes scanning the area for any signs of trouble. They reached the back of the warehouse, and through the cracked windows they could make out shadows moving inside. This was it, the moment of truth. Lena's heart was thumping in her chest as she and Malik crouched behind a stack of old crates. The warehouse loomed before them like a giant, dark shadow, and every nerve in Lena's body screamed at her to turn back. But there was no turning back now. They were too deep in this to pull out. "Stay quiet," Malik whispered, his breath steady as he scanned the area. "If we get caught, we're done, you understand?" Lena nodded, her fingers trembling but determined. She had to do this for her dad, for herself, for everything she had been fighting for. Whatever Sharon was hiding in here, whatever shady dealings she was involved in, it needed to be exposed. They carefully crept around the back of the warehouse, finding a side door that wasn't fully closed. It was slightly ajar, just enough for them to slip inside. Lena's pulse quickened, but she knew this was the only chance they had. Malik gave her a look, no words needed, before pushing the door open just enough for them to sneak through. The smell of dust and old metal hit them as soon as they entered, the floor creaking beneath their feet. The warehouse was dimly lit, the only light coming from a flickering bulb high above them. They moved cautiously through the rows of shelves and discarded boxes, every footstep echoing in the still air. Lena's mind raced as she thought back to Sharon's conversation at the coffee shop, the words replaying in her head. "I'll make sure he doesn't find out, and you just do your part." What was this place? What was Sharon doing here? And who were these people she was dealing with? They rounded a corner and saw a group of people huddled near the far end of the warehouse. Lena froze, peering around a stack of crates to get a better look. There she was, Sharon, standing at the center of a group of men, all looking rough, their faces hard and full of mistrust. One of the men, a tall guy with a scruffy beard and tattoos covering his arms, handed Sharon a briefcase. She took it without hesitation, her eyes scanning the room before she spoke. "It's all here," Sharon said, her voice smooth, too calm for Lena's liking. "We agreed on the price. No funny business, right?" The man with the tattoos snorted. "Don't get cute, lady. You're lucky we're even giving you this much time. You better not try pulling some stunt on us, or things are gonna get real ugly real fast." Lena felt her stomach twist. This wasn't just business. This was dangerous. Sharon was involved in something way deeper than Lena could have imagined. The briefcase, the shady men, the threats, it was all coming together. "Relax," Sharon said, a little too casually. "I've got everything under control. Your money's gonna get here, don't worry about it." The man grunted and walked off, but Lena couldn't stop staring at Sharon. What was in that briefcase? What kind of deal was she making with these people? Lena turned to Malik, who was looking just as stunned. He mouthed the word police, but Lena shook her head. "No cops, not yet, not until they had more. If they went to the authorities now, it would be their word against Sharon's." They needed proof. Just then, Lena's heart skipped a beat. Sharon turned, her sharp eyes scanning the room again. For a second, Lena thought she was looking right at them, but then Sharon moved past, her attention returning to the men around her. Lena's breath caught in her throat. They couldn't afford to be seen. They had to get out of there. Lena grabbed Malik's arm, pulling him backward, but just as they turned to leave, one of the men looked up and saw them. "Hey," he shouted, pointing in their direction. "Who the hell are you?" Lena's stomach dropped. It was like time froze for a moment as she and Malik exchanged frantic looks. Without thinking, they bolted, running as fast as they could, their footsteps echoing in the quiet warehouse. The man shouted again, his voice growing angrier as he chased after them. "Go. Go," Malik hissed, grabbing Lena's hand and pulling her toward the door. They didn't stop running until they were out of the warehouse and halfway across the parking lot. Their lungs were burning, their legs screaming in protest, but they didn't dare slow down. They couldn't afford to stop. They reached Malik's truck and he jumped into the driver's seat, slamming the door behind him. Lena hopped in beside him, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone chasing them, but the only sound was the engine roaring to life. "Shit," Malik muttered, speeding down the road. "That was too close." Lena looked out the window, her mind spinning. She had never been so scared in her life, but now she knew one thing for sure: Sharon was involved in something way more dangerous than she ever realized. And it wasn't just about money or power, it was about survival. Lena looked at Malik, her voice shaking but steady. "We need to tell Dad. We can't keep this from him anymore. It's worse than I thought." Malik glanced at her, his expression grim. "You're right, but we need proof. We can't just tell him. We gotta show him what she's really up to. If we're wrong, we might just make everything worse." Lena's hands clenched into fists. "We won't be wrong, Malik. We're going back. We're getting that proof." The night felt heavier than usual as Malik's truck roared down the empty highway. Lena sat beside him, her mind racing with thoughts of the warehouse, the briefcase, and the shady men Sharon was dealing with. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sharon's calm, collected face, too calm, too in control. The woman had always been a mystery, but now Lena was starting to realize just how deep the rabbit hole went. "We're not going back there tomorrow, right?" Malik asked, glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. His voice was tight with concern, and Lena could hear the unease in it. Lena shook her head, not taking her eyes off the dark road ahead. "No, we need to be smarter. We know they're watching, and we can't just barge in there again, not without a plan." "But what's the plan? Because I'm not gonna lie, Lena, I'm feeling like we're in over our heads here." Malik's voice cracked with a hint of fear, and Lena could hear it. She wasn't the only one scared. "I know," Lena replied, her voice quiet but filled with determination. "But we don't have any choice now. We can't just walk away." Malik didn't say anything else. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, his jaw set in a firm line. He knew the stakes just as much as she did. If Sharon had been working with these criminals, there was no telling what she was capable of. They had to stop her, and they had to stop her now. As they pulled into the driveway, Lena's stomach churned with anxiety. It was late, and the house was quiet, too quiet. The Colonel's truck was parked out front, but the house felt like a tomb. Lena's dad had been home for hours, probably pacing the floor, thinking about the things she'd told him. He still hadn't said a word about their last conversation. Lena stepped out of the truck and headed straight for the front door, her mind running through the possibilities. How was she going to tell her dad everything without destroying what was left of their family? The door creaked open and Lena stepped into the hallway, trying to make herself as invisible as possible. The Colonel was in his study just like she expected. She could see the light under the door flickering every so often. He was probably still reading through files, reviewing things from work, maybe even contemplating what his daughter had said about Sharon. Lena took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage she needed. She had no idea how to approach him now, but one thing was for sure: whatever happened next, it was going to change everything. She couldn't hold back anymore. She knocked lightly on the door, and after a long pause, she heard the deep voice of her dad calling out. "Come in." Lena pushed the door open slowly, her eyes immediately meeting his. Colonel Carter sat behind his desk, papers scattered across it, a glass of whiskey beside him. The shadows in the room seemed to magnify his serious expression. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, her voice a little shaky but determined. The Colonel didn't look up at first. He simply stared at the papers in front of him, tapping his fingers against the desk rhythmically. After what felt like an eternity, he sighed and set the papers down. "What is it now, Lena?" he asked, his voice almost tired, but there was a certain hardness to it. Lena stepped further into the room and closed the door behind her, taking a seat across from him. She needed to be straight with him, no more beating around the bush. But how could she even begin? "I've been following Sharon," she blurted out, cutting straight to the heart of it. "I saw her with people I don't trust, dangerous people, Dad, people who are involved in things I don't think you're aware of." The colonel raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. He wasn't dismissing her, but Lena could tell he was skeptical. He had to be. He trusted Sharon, he loved her, but Lena couldn't hold back anymore. "I saw her last night at a warehouse. She was meeting with some guys and it didn't look like any regular business deal. It looked like she was making some kind of shady deal. There was a briefcase involved, Dad. They handed it to her and she took it like it was no big deal, like this was normal." Lena felt her voice crack slightly, but she pressed on, determined. She told them not to worry, that everything was under control. "I think she's hiding something big, and I'm telling you, Dad, I don't think you know what's going on. I don't think you know her at all." The silence in the room was suffocating. The colonel didn't move, didn't speak. Lena watched him closely, waiting for some kind of reaction, but all she saw was the slight twitch of his jaw. It was almost like he was trying to process everything she just said, trying to find a way to make sense of it. Finally, the colonel looked up at her, his eyes cold and sharp. "So you think she's been lying to me all this time?" Lena swallowed hard but nodded. "I'm not sure what else to think, Dad, but I know what I saw. And I'm not the only one who's seen it. Malik and I." The colonel stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor, his fists clenched at his sides as he turned to face her. "You've been following her behind my back." "Lena, I can't believe you'd do something like that." Lena's heart raced, but she didn't back down. "I did what I had to do, Dad. I'm trying to protect you. Don't you see? She's not who you think she is. I'm trying to keep this family together." The colonel's face was flushed with anger now, his eyes flashing dangerously. "You should have come to me first. If you had any doubt, you should have come to me, but now you've gone behind my back and you've dragged Malik into this too." Lena stood up, her voice shaking with frustration. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to turn our family upside down? I didn't have a choice, Dad. I tried to warn you, I tried to tell you, but you didn't listen." The colonel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "You have no idea what you're doing, Lena. I don't know if Sharon is involved in something shady, but you better be damn sure before you accuse her of anything." Lena's stomach twisted, but she stood firm. "I'm sure, Dad, and I'm not gonna stop until I know the truth." The colonel stared at her for a long moment before finally speaking, his voice quieter now but filled with warning. "You've crossed a line, Lena. And if you're wrong about this, you'll regret it." Lena could feel the heat rising in her chest. The colonel's words stung more than she expected, but she refused to back down now. She had gone too far. She had risked everything, her relationship with her father, her trust in Sharon, to uncover the truth, and she wasn't going to stop just because it made her dad uncomfortable. Her father's eyes were fixed on her now, a mix of disbelief and disappointment in his gaze. For a split second, Lena thought she might crumble under the weight of it, but then she remembered why she was here. This wasn't about them. It wasn't about her and her dad's strained relationship. It was about Sharon and whatever darkness she had wrapped up inside her. Sharon was the one who had made this mess. Sharon was the one who had forced Lena's hand. "I'm not wrong, Dad," Lena said, her voice trembling but sharp. She refused to let him see her doubt. "I saw it with my own eyes. Sharon is hiding something and I don't know what it is yet, but I will find out. I won't stop until I do." The colonel's expression didn't soften. His jaw was clenched, his nostrils flaring as if he were trying to contain some emotion that was threatening to spill over. For a moment, Lena wondered if he might actually explode, shout at her to drop it, to stop being so stubborn. But instead, he exhaled sharply, his hands resting on the back of his chair. "You've crossed a line, Lena," he said, his voice tight. "You've gone too far with this. Do you understand what you're accusing her of? If I go down that road with you, there's no coming back. Do you really want to tear this family apart?" Lena's breath caught. She hadn't really thought about it like that. She hadn't thought about the fact that if her dad chose Sharon over her, she couldn't imagine the fallout. The anger, the brokenness, the irreparable rift, but that didn't change what she knew. Sharon had to be stopped. I don't want to tear the family apart, Dad, Lena whispered, her voice cracking. But I can't just stand by and pretend like nothing's happening. What's going on with Sharon? Why won't you see it? She's manipulating you. She's using you. The colonel's eyes hardened, his hand gripping the edge of the desk as if he was holding onto his last shred of control. You don't know her like I do. You think you're the only one who's seen things from the outside. You think I haven't had my doubts, but I've been with Sharon long enough to know that the woman I married is nothing like what you're describing. Lena's pulse quickened. This wasn't about her dad just defending his wife anymore. This was something deeper, something more personal. Then why do you look so lost, Dad? Why do you keep looking like you're in denial? Lena shot back, a burst of frustration rising from deep within her. She couldn't hold back anymore. You know I wouldn't say this if I wasn't sure, if I didn't have proof. The colonel turned away from her, stepping toward the window. You don't have proof, you have suspicions, Lena. You're letting your own feelings cloud your judgment. You think because Sharon's not your mom that she's some kind of enemy, but you're wrong. This family isn't perfect and no one is without faults, but you need to stop accusing people just because you don't like them. Lena's anger flared. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her father was still defending Sharon, still acting like his new wife was some innocent angel who could do no wrong. I'm not accusing her because I don't like her, Dad, Lena said, her voice rising. I'm accusing her because she's done things, she's been sneaky and I've been watching her. I don't want to hate her, but I can't just sit back and let her ruin everything. The colonel turned to face her, his eyes narrowing. I don't want to hear any more, Lena. You've made your accusations and now it's over. I won't entertain this anymore. Lena froze. For a second she thought she might burst into tears, but she refused to give in. She was standing in front of him, fighting for everything she believed in. This wasn't about being right, it was about protecting her family. I'm not giving up on this, Dad, she said, her voice firm, even though her heart felt like it might shatter. I'm going to find the truth, whether you help me or not. Before the colonel could respond, Lena turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind her. She needed to think. She needed space to breathe. She couldn't just drop this now. She couldn't let Sharon keep getting away with whatever she was doing. The thought of her dad, of the man who'd raised her completely in the dark, was too much to bear. She needed a plan. The following morning, Lena woke up to a cold, silent house. It wasn't the quiet of peace, it was the quiet before a storm. She had no idea how she was going to fix this. Her father wouldn't listen, and Sharon was still out there doing God knows what. She couldn't just go back to pretending everything was fine, not anymore. The phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her from her thoughts. It was Malik. Yo, we need to talk. His voice came through the phone, urgent. Meet me at the diner in an hour, I've got something. Lena's heart skipped a beat. Something? What was it? Had he found out more, or was it another dead end? She didn't know, but she couldn't ignore it. She was already out of bed and heading toward the door before she even realized it. She had to know, whatever Malik had, it was time to get the truth once and for all. Lena sat at the diner, tapping her fingers anxiously on the chipped table. The fluorescent lights above buzzed softly, and the sound of clinking silverware filled the air, but all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. She couldn't stop thinking about the argument with her dad last night. It felt like her world was coming apart, like she was losing her footing on everything she knew. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. Malik's call had sent a jolt of hope through her, and now she was here, waiting for whatever news he had. The door to the diner swung open, and in walked Malik, his face a mix of exhaustion and determination. He had his jacket pulled tight around him, a cap low over his eyes, trying to keep a low profile. Lena stood up as he approached, her eyes searching his face for any sign of what he had uncovered. Talk to me, Lena said, her voice thick with anticipation. Malik slid into the booth across from her, glancing around before speaking. I got something, Lena, something big. Lena leaned in, her pulse quickening. What is it? Malik sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I think you were right about Sharon. I've been doing some digging, checking out her contacts, looking into her past. And, well, he hesitated, glancing around again. I found something that ties her to some dangerous people. She's not just sneaking around behind your back, she's involved in something serious. Lena's mind was racing. Dangerous people. She hadn't been wrong, but what exactly had she stumbled into? Who are these people? Lena pressed, her voice barely a whisper. Malik pulled out his phone and tapped a few buttons, sliding it across the table to Lena. "These guys," he said quietly. "I tracked a number that was on one of Sharon's old accounts. It's connected to a few names, guys with a history of shady business, drug trafficking, arms deals, even money laundering. These are the kinds of people she's been dealing with." Lena stared at the screen, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the details. The names Malik had found weren't just random criminals, they were high-profile figures in the underground world. And Sharon had been keeping all of this a secret from her dad. She wasn't just hiding her shady dealings, she was involved in something that could destroy everything. "I knew it," Lena whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "She's been lying this whole time, she's been working with these people." Malik leaned back in the booth, his voice low. "Yeah, and the thing is, she's been using your dad to cover up her tracks. She's been playing him like a pawn in whatever game she's in. And I'm telling you, Lena, this is bigger than we thought. We have to be careful." Lena's head was spinning. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her as the reality of the situation sank in. Sharon wasn't just an evil stepmother, she was part of a criminal network, and her dad was completely blind to it. How had it gotten this far? How had Sharon managed to keep everything under wraps for so long? "I can't let this go, Malik," Lena said, her voice fierce. "I can't just sit here and watch her destroy everything. I have to tell him, I have to make him see what she's really doing." Malik looked at her with concern. "Lena, you can't just walk in there and drop this on him. It's going to destroy him. You have to have more than just this to back you up. You can't make these kinds of accusations without solid proof. If we go in with just this, Sharon will make you look crazy. You're not just going up against her, you're going up against a network of people who have been doing this for years." Lena took a deep breath, staring down at her hands. He was right. If she confronted her dad now with nothing but this, it would destroy her credibility. But she had to do something. Her dad needed to know the truth, no matter what it cost her. "I'll get the proof," she said, her voice steady now. "I'll find it. I won't stop until I have everything I need to show him that she's not who he thinks she is." Malik frowned, clearly worried. "Be careful, you don't know what kind of people you're dealing with. Sharon's not just playing with fire, she's working with arsonists, and if you're caught in the middle of this, it could get real ugly real fast." Lena nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. She wasn't naive, she knew the risks. But she had no choice. Sharon had crossed the line. She was no longer just a bad stepmother, she was a threat to their entire family, and Lena would do whatever it took to bring her down. "I'll handle it," Lena said, her jaw set. "I'm not backing down." The next few days were a blur of careful planning and quiet determination. Lena had already contacted a few people who could help her get deeper into Sharon's network, contacts from the local police, private investigators, anyone who might have information on her. She had to be sure that the truth she uncovered would be undeniable. She followed Sharon again, watching from a distance, hoping for one more opportunity to catch her in the act, and that's when it happened. Lena saw Sharon leaving a building she didn't recognize. It was a small office complex on the edge of town. She watched as Sharon got into a sleek black car with tinted windows, one of the men from the warehouse sitting beside her. They exchanged a few words and then they drove off. Lena followed them at a distance, her heart pounding. This could be the break she needed. She had to find out where they were going. The car eventually pulled into a secluded parking garage, and Lena parked a few blocks away, taking out her phone to snap a few pictures. Her hands were steady as she captured the scene. This was it. She had the proof. But just as she was about to leave, the door to the garage swung open and another black car rolled in. This time it was one she recognized, Colonel Carter's truck. Lena's stomach dropped. What was her dad doing here? Lena's heart raced as she watched the colonel's truck roll into the parking garage. Everything seemed to slow down for a moment, time stretching out like an endless highway. What was he doing here? Was he following Sharon, or had she managed to pull him into her web of lies? Lena's mind was spinning. She had no idea what was going on, but she couldn't just stand here and watch. She needed answers. She needed to know if her dad was in on Sharon's game or if this was another one of Sharon's manipulations. Without thinking, Lena pulled her phone out, snapping a quick picture of the truck before slipping out of her car. She moved quickly, ducking behind a pillar to stay out of sight, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. She watched as the colonel stepped out of his truck, looking calm and composed as always. But there was something different about the way he moved. The way he looked around before walking toward the entrance to the building like he was expecting something or someone, Lena's stomach churned. What if he was here to meet with those men from the warehouse? What if Sharon had already dragged him into this mess without him even realizing it? Then, just as quickly as the thought came, Lena shook it off. No. This wasn't the time for doubts. She had to know. She followed him from a safe distance, keeping her footsteps as quiet as possible. The garage smelled of oil and concrete, and the faint hum of the lights overhead did nothing to calm her nerves. Her breathing was shallow, her thoughts racing. What was her dad doing? She rounded the corner of the garage and peered inside. The colonel was standing at the entrance to an office, talking to a man that Lena instantly recognized. It was one of the men she'd seen at the warehouse, the one with the tattoos and the cold, hard eyes, the one who had threatened Sharon if she didn't follow through on her part of the deal. Lena's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a coincidence. Her dad was involved in whatever shady dealings Sharon was mixed up in. She moved closer, taking another quick snapshot of the scene. She had to get the proof. She had to show him that his world was built on a foundation of lies. But just as Lena moved in closer, the door to the office creaked open and Sharon stepped out. Her eyes locked with Lena's for just a moment, and for the first time, Sharon's face wasn't calm or controlled. It was a mask slipping. Lena's stomach dropped. Sharon knew she'd figured it out. In that instant, Lena turned and ran. She wasn't sure how far she had to go or if her dad had seen her, but her heart pounded in her chest, pushing her to keep moving. She had to get out before things spiraled out of control. She rounded the corner of the building, but then, to her horror, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Someone was following her. She could hear it getting closer. "Lena," came a voice, and it was her dad's. The sternness in his tone sent a chill through her. "Stop right there." Lena froze, her breath catching in her throat. She turned slowly to face him, her heart pounding louder than ever. He was standing there, his expression hard. He'd caught up to her, and now she had no choice but to face him. "Dad, I didn't—" "No," the colonel interrupted, his voice low and controlled. "I want to hear it from you." "What are you doing here?" Lena took a deep breath. She had to tell him the truth, all of it, every single thing she had uncovered. She pulled out her phone, showing him the photos of Sharon, the men from the warehouse, and the building they were in. "This is what she's been hiding, Dad. She's been working with dangerous people, criminals, and you've been in the middle of it all. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't let you stay blind to this." The colonel took a step back, his eyes scanning the photos, his face paling as the truth began to settle in. "Lena, you didn't know," Lena interrupted, her voice soft but firm. "But I had to show you, she's not just manipulating you, she's been using you, and she's been using us." For a long moment, the colonel said nothing. His hands were shaking slightly as he held the photos, the reality of it all settling into his bones. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what to believe anymore, Lena." Lena's heart broke at his words, but she held her ground. She couldn't back down now. She couldn't let Sharon's lies tear their family apart. "Dad, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to see the truth, and the truth is, Sharon isn't who you think she is." The colonel lowered his head, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of the world was suddenly on him. "I need time, Lena." This is too much." Lena nodded, fighting back tears. "I know, Dad, I know, but I'm here for you. We'll get through this, together." The colonel looked up at her, his eyes tired but filled with a hint of hope. "We'll get through it," he repeated softly. As Lena watched him walk back to his truck, she realized that no matter how hard it had been, this was the first step toward healing. The truth had finally come out, and now their family could begin to rebuild. Thank you for following Lena's journey through deception and family betrayal. If you enjoyed this story and want to read more thrilling, twist-filled tales, make sure to follow for updates on the next chapter in Lena's world or explore more gripping fiction. What would you do if your family was tangled in lies? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.